Hey everybody, it's Daniel. I am here in Toledo. Toledo, the former capital of Spain. Toledo, the city that is famous for mixing three cultures. The three cultures were the Christian, the Moorish, and the Jewish. Way back in the day, before that we had the Romans, the Visigoths. It's a place with a lot of history. Behind me we have the Tagus River. In Spanish we call it El Tajo. It's one of the big rivers on the Iberian Peninsula. I think it's the one that ends in Lisbon, Portugal. It's a very nice scene out here. Anyway, I'm not really here to see Toledo. I'm here to have an adventure, and the adventure will be starting tomorrow. Hey everybody, good morning from Castilla-La Mancha. I'm doing La Ruta de Don Quixote. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'll see you on the road. So one of Don Quixote's first adventures, and I believe his most famous, is that he sees some of these windmills off in the distance, and he says to his buddy Sancho, like, hey, you see those giants over there? I'm gonna go fight those giants. And his buddy Sancho says, no, those are quite clearly windmills. And Don Quixote replies, well, you just don't know very much about having adventures. I believe the exciting conclusion is that Don Quixote gets, his lance caught in the sails of one of these windmills, gets beat up by the windmill and has to recover for a few days. But it's a very famous scene in world literature. The phrase tilting at windmills I've seen in a lot of other novels talking about just sort of having impossible dreams and trying to fight impossible fights, basically, which was Don Quixote's whole thing. The town here is Consuegra, by the way. I haven't seen much of the town, but it's here behind me. They've got a little castle here up on the hill, and it looks like they've got 10 or 12 of these old windmills. There's other points with the old windmills in La Mancha. Campo de Criptana is famous for windmills also, and there's a lot of new windmills. Generally they have a lot of wind out here, and that's a valuable resource. By the way, this is with biketourinSpain.com. Raul from biketourinSpain.com has recently started this project. He's a fan of my podcast. He wrote to me, he suggested, why don't you come out to La Mancha and do La Ruta de Don Quixote on a touring bike? So that's what I'm doing. Got about 4 days of heavy cycling ahead of me. Typical La Mancha countryside here. We got the grapes, we got the olives over in the back. There's almond trees around and a lot of wheat fields. Raul from over at biketourinSpain.com says that the countryside in La Mancha can be a bit repetitive, but that he has selected the creme de la creme of stops that I'm going to be making, places that I can see. So I'm on my way to Puerto Lápice. I have never heard of Puerto Lápice in my life. 20 years in Spain, nobody's ever told me to visit Puerto Lápice, but we're gonna see. It's really quiet. I can hear like the crickets singing out in the vineyards and the birds over in the olive trees twittering. It's quite a bit different than my life out in Barcelona. I had a friend from out here back in the day. His family had vineyards, and they couldn't afford to hire people to harvest the grapes. So it was kind of a bring your friends down to Toledo and we'll all pick grapes together and we'll pay you in grapes and lunch. And so I spent a day picking grapes. It was hard work. I don't recommend picking grapes as a leisure activity or as a job unless you really have to. But The grapevines are usually just very low, like you can see behind me. They're just these little bushes on the ground. Some of them are trellised and they're higher, and so you don't have to bend down all day when you're harvesting, but the traditional thing is just the ones that are on the ground. You're bent over in the sun and you're just clipping off bunches of grapes all day long. It's rough. This is a nice bike, nice smooth ride. I'm on a dirt road, so it's bumpy because of the dirt, not because of the bike. And it's just me out here. It's me and occasionally a tractor will go by. Have you read Don Quixote? If you haven't, here's the basic idea. It's about this old guy who reads way too many books about knights and adventures and chivalry. And he kind of loses his mind and he goes out and he decides he's going to have his own adventures. And so basically he walks around, or he rides his horse around, around the open spaces of La Mancha. And he gets his ass kicked by like a whole bunch of different people and natural phenomena probably also. And he has a series of adventures which I guess probably have some relevance to the situation of Spain at that time. He runs into some people who are supposed to be galley slaves, and he like frees the galley slaves. The galleys are these ships where you're rowing on these ships. Cervantes had actually been a slave. He was captured and sold into slavery. So, different times. Apparently the idea came to Cervantes in prison, the idea for Don Quixote. At least this is the legend. We don't know much about Cervantes except what Cervantes wrote about Cervantes. So, I don't think he was a super famous guy during most of his lifetime. He was just getting by. His most famous thing, other than Don Quixote, is he was distinguished in the Battle of Lepanto. This was down in the Mediterranean, a battle between the Ottoman Empire and sort of a coalition of European countries. The whole, Christians versus Muslims thing that was happening around the Mediterranean at that point. Miguel de Cervantes was shot in this battle, and he lost the use of one of his hands in this battle. Like the bullet went through his hand and cut a nerve, and so he had the hand still, but he was, unable to use it. One of his nicknames in Spanish literature is El Manco de Lepanto. And, you have no reason to know that, but I know that, and now you know that. El Manco de Lepanto. Manco means you're missing a hand, but, it wasn't literally missing. Back on the pavement here. This must be a local highway, but there's nobody on it. It's real chill. And I'm doing this in the first week of May, so it's also springy. There's a lot of flowers around on all sides. Having a great time. Got a little ermita out here in the middle of nowhere. Nuestra Señora de Valdehierro. Our Lady of the Valley of Iron, or something. Apparently this is a campground and a natural park outside the town of Madridejos. There appears to be one person camping here in a van, but there's quite a large area. I'm gonna go ring the bell. A lot of these little country ermitas have a bell where you can just grab the rope or the chain and yank on it and ring the bell yourself. Make a wish. Okay, the landscape has changed here. Now we've got all these big oak trees. There was a sign back there about vultures and don't disturb the vultures where they're feeding. I didn't see any vultures. But there are different kinds of vultures out here in Spain. Some of them are endangered. There's a type called quebrantahuesos, which they pick up bones and they fly up in the air and they drop them on rocks, and then they can eat the marrow out of the bone. Quebrantahuesos means exactly that. It means bone breakers or bone crushers or something. Anyway, I've got 8.5 kilometers left to Puerto Lápice, so see you there in just a little bit. Okay, so Puerto Lápice is in El Quixote. The first thing that Don Quixote does is he leaves his house, he rides around all day, and he realizes that nobody has made him officially a knight. So he sees like an inn, sort of a hotel off by the side of the road, and he thinks it's a castle, and that inside the castle there will be somebody who can officially make him a knight. And he goes in and he acts crazy, and the guy who's the owner of the hotel eventually just decides to humor him and officially dub him a knight, as it were. And so they have a little ceremony, and then Don Quixote rides off, convinced that he is finally a knight, ready for bigger adventures. Okay, I was talking about Raul from BikeTourinSpain.com. I've got him right here with me.
Hello everyone. We after some cycling from Daniel and just that's nice here.
You can do that again.
And going on the van by me. Now we are enjoying menú del día and ensalada mixta.
Okay, day one, part two. I've got to do another 13 kilometers to a place called Argamasilla. I was with Raul because he does some of these parts in the van because they're not exactly continuous. So he does some transfers. Otherwise, I am using Wikiloc, which is just a GPS app on the phone. He sends you the GPS files and you follow the track, and it's great. Pretty easy navigation. He says nobody has gotten lost so far. Other than that, it's windy, so I'm not going to talk much. I'll see you in Argamasilla de Alba. This little hut back here is called a bombo. It's just made from the rocks that they find when they're tilling the fields out here, and it's a little hut for the farmers to store their tools in or to sleep in if they're, far from home. Okay, we're here in Argamasilla de Alba. It's pretty basic. The Don Quixote tie-in here is that Miguel de Cervantes, this is where he was in prison. It's not really clear exactly why he was in prison, as far as I know. He was a tax collector. It looks like there was something wrong with the books that he was keeping, and so they threw him in prison. He might have been, stealing public money. Maybe not. He certainly wouldn't be the first or the last Spanish person to spend a few years stealing public money, so it's always a possibility. Anyway, this town is pretty basic. You got like the mechanic for tractors, you got the bus depot, you got a bunch of people walking around in track suits. We're not really close to any big city, so it's not a fashion capital, let's say. Okay, this is the house where Cervantes was imprisoned. The original house is long gone. This is the replacement house, I believe. The cave is allegedly the same. They call it the cave, but in Spanish, la cueva could just be sort of a basement, underground dungeon type thing. You can find pictures of it on Wikipedia. It's just this little room, and allegedly it is where Cervantes had the idea to write Don Quixote, if not started writing it. he may have started writing it here. Other than that, it looks like there's not a lot happening in Argamasilla de Alba, and looks like not much has ever happened here. I haven't found much history online. It's just a place that exists in La Mancha. Alright, it's getting dark. I don't know if this is one video or if this is multiple videos, but either way, I'll see you tomorrow right here in La Mancha.